It's just after 5 a.m. on a January morning in Reykjavík. The clubs are closing. The streets are quiet in that specific way they get when a night has gone on long enough that only the committed or the tired are still awake. A security camera catches a young woman walking alone down, Laugavegur, the city's main street. She's bundled against the cold. In one hand, she's holding a pita. She pauses, takes a bite. A red Fiat comes into view. Within hours, she will be reported missing. Within days, Iceland will launch the largest search in its modern history. This is the last confirmed sighting of Birna Brjánsdóttir. She is 20 years old. Later, her boots will be found at a dock. You're listening to True Crime Culinary. I'm your host, Leah Jack. Let's sink our teeth into this story. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of True Crime Culinary. This is my last pre-recorded episode as I will be wrapping up my hopefully amazing honeymoon in Africa. My husband and I are visiting Egypt and Kenya, and as a total animal nerd, I cannot wait to geek out on all the animals I get to see. And yes, I will be geeking out about every part of them, and I will probably be chattering away to everybody who wants to hear about all the facts I know about them, because it's my favorite thing ever. I was excited to dig into this story, one, because I don't hear a ton about murders in Iceland. That is because their murder rate is quite low. But also, I wanted to dig into what Birna was holding. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, let's continue on her story. Birna disappeared on January 14th, 2017. Iceland is a country where violent crime is rare enough to feel almost theoretical. People walk home alone, doors are left unlocked. When someone doesn't show up, the assumption is usually it's an accident, whether miscommunication or exhaustion. But as hours turned into days, that assumption collapsed. Hundreds of volunteers searched lava fields and coastlines. The North Atlantic churned just offshore, unforgiving and cold. Surveillance footage was reviewed frame by frame. On January 22nd, Birna's body was found near a lighthouse south of Reykjavík. The investigation would eventually lead to the arrest and conviction of a Greenlandic fisherman. In 2018, he was sentenced to 19 years in prison. But on True Crime Culinary, we don't talk about the murderers. We talk about the individual food details that we see in murders. This one is about something quieter, something ordinary, and something that was there in her last public moment. We're going to talk about falafel. That's because when Birna was walking and got stopped by the Fiat, she was holding a falafel pita like millions of people do every day in cities far warmer than this one. And it raises a question. How did the falafel end up in Iceland? How did it end up in Reykjavík in her hand? Because falafel doesn't belong to Iceland, at least not historically. It doesn't grow in this climate. It doesn't come from this landscape of lava rock and glaciers. And yet there it is, at 5 a.m, as ordinary as fries. If you've never had falafel, let me describe it to you, using words from Le Google. Falafel is a popular Middle Eastern street food consisting of deep-fried balls or patties made from ground chickpeas, fava beans, or a mix of both, blended with herbs and spices like parsley, cilantro, cumin. If you're not drooling, hello? Anyway, it's got coriander for a savory, earthy flavor. It's a staple vegetarian or vegan dish, often served stuffed in a pita, which is like a pocket bread with vegetables in tahini sauce or as part of a meze platter known for its crispy exterior and soft interior. Now, if that doesn't get you hungry, my friends, get on Uber Eats, get out the door, get a recipe. It is worth eating. Something else I didn't know about falafel is that it's actually a pretty debated food. There are a lot of communities who feel a sense of ownership around the creation and the shaping of falafel. For this episode, I'm going to focus on the history or summary of history that I saw most often in research and seems to be most accepted. But please understand that there are other perspectives out there. And so, hey, check it out if you're that interested. Falafel's earliest roots are usually traced to Egypt, likely between the 4th and 7th centuries among Coptic Christian communities. Coptic Christianity includes long fasting periods during which meat, dairy, and eggs are avoided. What people needed was protein that was affordable, filling, and allowed under fasting rules. So the answer was fava beans. Fava beans were widely grown in Egypt. They were cheap and storable, high in protein, and already central to dishes like ful medames. I apologize for pronunciation. But since I'm heading to Egypt, hopefully I'll get to eat some of this live. Early falafel, often called ta'amiyah, was made from soaked fava beans, crushed with garlic, coriander, and parsley, then fried. The interior stayed green from the herbs. This wasn't street food yet, it was household food and fasting food. As falafel moved out of Egypt and into the eastern Mediterranean, the base changed. In the Levant, areas that are now Lebanon, Syria, Israel, and Palestine, chickpeas were more common than fava beans. They were for practical reasons. Chickpeas grew better in drier conditions, they stored longer without spoilage, and they were already used for dishes like hummus. So it was the same technique, different legume. This shift likely happened gradually, over centuries, as cooks adapted the recipe to what they had. The result was a falafel that was slightly denser, nuttier, and better suited to being shaved into balls and served in bread. By the time falafel became street food, roughly the 19th and early 20th centuries, it was rarely eaten alone. It was served with flatbread or pita, tahini sauce, pickled vegetables, tomato, cucumber, onion, and later hot sauce or amba. This mattered because falafel is dry on its own. It's meant to be balanced, crunchy against soft bread, fat against acid, herbs against spice. It's filling but not heavy. That combination made it ideal street food because it's cheap, portable, vegetarian, and easy to eat while you're walking. Cities adopted it quickly. So falafel didn't arrive in Iceland through tradition. It arrived through people. In the late 20th century, Iceland saw increased immigration and tourism. Reykjavik's food scene expanded fast. Kebabs, tacos, sushi, and falafel appearing within the same few decades. And may I just say, that sounds delicious. Falafel fit easily into that mix. It required no local agriculture, it worked late at night, it appealed to locals and tourists alike. By the 2010s, falafel in Reykjavik wasn't novel, it was standard. So when Birna is seen eating a falafel pita, it isn't symbolic. It's practical, it's warm and filling, and it's what's open at 5 a.m. A food that started as fava beans in religious kitchens centuries ago ends up in a paper wrapper on an Icelandic street. That's not a metaphor, it's just history. So unfortunately for Birna, she was found dead, as I mentioned. Her body was found about 40 kilometers away from Reykjavik. And what was hypothesized to happen is that a Greenlandic fisherman picked her up. It sounds like she was beaten, potentially drowned, and dumped into the ocean. And then she washed up 2 weeks later. When they found her driver's license on the boat that this fisherman was working on, they found fingerprints from Birna in his car that tied him to the scene. There was also video footage of him cleaning his car, and even a shipmate, I believe, was there as a witness during the testimony because the killer came back to the boat very drunk. It's unclear why he picked Birna, but the really sad thing is Birna was only like 20 years old and her killer was only 25, which is just like, when I think of where I was at 25, it was not in this scene. It was like going out late, but it wasn't like, why would you want to end a life at 25? It just seems so cruel and short-sighted. Fortunately, he was imprisoned. He is serving his sentence, I believe, in Denmark now. So it was important to me to tell Birna's story, but also to explain a detail about her last moments, which included historical food. I hope to be eating this food when I'm in Egypt, and I will think of Birna. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode, learning a little bit more about some street food. I love a falafel, so can't wait to eat it. If you like this story, as a favor to me, please rate, review, and forward the podcast to somebody who also loves random details and bite-sized podcasts. Until next time, stay curious and be careful what's in your cup. Check out our show notes for sources, hit that subscribe button, rate and review the podcast anywhere you listen.